The living room glowed with the flicker of the television, shadows stretching across the walls. David sat beside me, one leg crossed over the other, laughing at a joke from the sports commentator. His laughter sounded distant, like it belonged to another world. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I picked it up, expecting some harmless notification. Instead, a single message stared back at me. "Don't say anything. Just check your bank account." My hand trembled. The banking app opened with a few taps, and my breath caught in my throat. Half our savings. Gone. I turned toward David. He sipped his beer, smiling at the screen. I said nothing. "My name is Emma Caldwell, 37 years old. On paper, my life looks steady, some might even call it enviable. A house on the quiet edge of town, a husband with a decent job in sales, a modest savings account we'd worked years to build. Most mornings, I woke before the alarm. The house always felt still at that hour, the air cool against my skin as I slipped from bed and padded across the creaky wooden floorboards. The kitchen light flicked on, revealing counters worn smooth by years of use, and I made coffee, 2 mugs like clockwork. David's, 1 sugar splash of milk. Mine black, steaming bitter. I don't know when the act had become ritual more than intimacy. There was a time when I loved the simple care in it, the quiet proof that we were a team. Now I suppose it was just habit. Still, I carried the mugs upstairs, nudging our bedroom door open with my hip. David usually stirred, mumbling thanks without opening his eyes, before rolling back into the warmth of the covers. I'd stand there a moment, watching him, trying to remind myself that this was the man I had promised forever to. Then I'd dress quickly for work, skirts pressed, hair pinned neatly. My job at the law firm wasn't glamorous, but I liked the steadiness of it. I was the one clients first met when they stepped inside. "Good morning, Caldwell and Green. How can I help you?" Some days were a rush of ringing phones and urgent messages. Other days were slow, marked by the soft scratching of pens on paper and the hum of the copy machine. My co-workers teased me about my desk, always stocked with extra pens, tissues, and little notes reminding myself of birthdays. "Emma's the office mom," one of the junior associates liked to say, and I'd laugh, because it wasn't entirely wrong. Caring for people, smoothing edges, keeping things together. That was who I was. After work, I'd return to our house, white paint peeling on the siding, the stubborn maple tree in the front yard still refusing to grow straight after a storm years ago. I'd cook dinner, roast chicken, pasta, stir-fry, placing the plates carefully, even when David came home late. We didn't fight much, but silence often stretched longer than words. Sometimes I sat on the porch at night, listening to the crickets, staring at the faint glow of neighbors' televisions in their windows. I wondered if they felt as ordinary as I did, as quietly invisible. And yet, there was pride in that invisibility. I wasn't flashy. I wasn't reckless. I was steady, the kind of woman people trusted to keep secrets, to balance the books, to show up on time. I had built a life on reliability, which is why the cracks, when they began to show, terrified me. I wanted so badly to believe David and I were strong, that the years we spent painting walls together, saving for vacations, laughing at small jokes, that they added up to something unshakable. I wanted to believe I hadn't wasted myself on someone who only saw me as background noise. But in the weeks after that text, as I poured his coffee, as I greeted clients with a practiced smile, as I folded his laundry with neat precision, a question whispered louder and louder in my mind. Who was I really building this life for? The first sign was small. Too small to matter, I told myself. It was a Saturday morning in March, gray light filtering through the blinds. I had gone to the ATM to pull out cash for groceries. The screen blinked, showing a balance lower than I expected. Not alarming, just odd. A bill must have cleared late, I thought. David sometimes forgot to tell me about his work reimbursements. I let it slide. The second sign came weeks later. David was in the shower one evening, steam fogging the bathroom mirror. His white dress shirt lay draped over the laundry basket. I reached for it, intending to toss it in, when I saw a faint pink smudge near the collar. Lipstick. I froze, shirt in hand, the damp fabric cool against my fingers. "David." I called, my voice steadier than I felt. "Yeah." Water splashed, casual. "There's a stain on your shirt." Do you want me to try to get it out? Sure, thanks. His tone was easy, unconcerned. I stood there, staring at the stain, wondering if I was imagining things. Maybe it was food. Maybe it was nothing. I scrubbed at it until my knuckles ached. The third sign was harder to ignore. A charge on our joint account for a hotel in a neighboring town. Not during one of his official business trips. Not even close. When I asked, he didn't blink. Late dinner with a client. I was too tired to drive home. Don't make it a big deal. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to be the kind of wife who trusted without question. So I nodded, lips pressed tight, and let it go. But late at night, lying awake beside him, doubt crept in. I remembered my mother's warning years ago, after she found out about my father's affairs. The lies don't start big, Emma. They start small. Small enough to explain away. Until one day you can't. Still, I swallowed the fear. Months passed. David's work trips became more frequent, his phone glued to his hand like an extension of his body. He'd step outside to take calls, lowering his voice, pacing along the driveway. I told myself he was stressed, that sales was demanding, that he was just busy. Until the night of the text. We were sitting on the couch, TV light flickering across our faces, when my phone buzzed. The message came from an unknown number. Don't say anything. Just check your bank account. My chest tightened. I opened the banking app, heart pounding. The numbers blurred. Thousands gone. Not one withdrawal, but a steady draining. Dinners, jewelry, weekends away. Half our savings. I blinked, staring at David beside me. He sipped his beer, laughed at the television, utterly at ease. I forced myself to breathe evenly, to smile faintly when he glanced my way. That night, when he rolled over and fell asleep instantly, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. It was no longer a question of suspicion. It was fact. The lipstick. The hotel. The missing money. He wasn't just unfaithful. He was reckless enough to spend what we had built together on someone else. For hours, I lay there, replaying every moment of our marriage. The first apartment we painted together. The nights we ate pasta on the floor because we couldn't afford a table yet. The weekends we worked overtime, saving for the house. All of it, siphoned away by a man who kissed me goodbye in the morning and kissed someone else at night. The betrayal sat in my chest like a stone. Heavy. Cold. And yet I said nothing. Because a strange thought had already taken root in my mind. If I confronted him now, it would be his story against mine. A shouting match. A scene. But if I waited, if I gathered proof, if I let him dig his own grave with each careless lie, then when the truth came out, there would be no escaping it. So I smiled at him the next morning, made his coffee, kissed his cheek, and in silence, I began to plan. The morning after that text, David kissed my cheek as he always did before leaving for work. His lips were warm, familiar. Too familiar. My skin prickled where he touched me. Big meeting today, he said, adjusting his tie in the mirror. Good luck, I replied, my voice steady, though the words tasted metallic. When the door closed behind him, I exhaled slowly, my body collapsing into the silence of the house. I reached for my phone, staring again at the message from the unknown number. My hands trembled as I typed back. Who is this? No answer came. But that evening, another message arrived. You deserve to know. Her name is Claire. She works at his firm. Claire. The name landed like a punch. Suddenly, pieces I had ignored started clicking together. The way David casually mentioned staying late with Claire's team. The smile that flashed across his face when her name came up. The way he brushed it off when I asked who she was. I sat at the kitchen table, the phone in my hand, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. That night, I studied him closely. The way he loosened his tie. The way his eyes flickered to his phone when he thought I wasn't watching. His laughter when he typed a message. Good day. I asked. My voice felt foreign. Busy. Non-stop meetings. He rubbed the back of his neck. You know how it is. Yeah, I said softly. Inside, something hardened. From then on, I began noticing everything. The faint cologne not his own lingering on his jacket. The extra effort he put into his appearance, crisp shirts, fresh haircuts. The sudden use of cologne he hadn't worn in years. One evening, he came home smelling faintly of wine, his eyes glassy. "Client dinner ran late again," he said, setting his briefcase down with a thud. I smiled, nodding, my face calm. "Of course. I trust you." The lie nearly strangled me. But I forced it out. Because silence was safer. Silence gave me time. At work, I found myself distracted. While answering phones, I thought about Claire. Was she younger? Prettier? Did she laugh at the same jokes I once did? At lunch, I sat in the break room pushing salad around my plate, my coworkers chatting about weekend plans. I heard nothing. My mind was elsewhere, replaying the image of David's phone lighting up, his secret smile. The unknown sender never messaged again, but I didn't need them to. The seed had been planted, and now the truth grew visible everywhere I looked. One Saturday, while folding laundry, I spotted a receipt crumpled in his pants pocket. 2 glasses of wine, a dessert for 2, at a restaurant we'd never gone to. My fingers curled around the paper. Heat rose to my face. That evening, as David watched TV, laughing at some show, I studied him in profile. The man who once made me laugh until I cried. The man I thought I knew down to the smallest detail. Now he was a stranger. But he was also careless. Too confident in my silence. And maybe that was my advantage. Because I realized then. He wasn't afraid of losing me. He wasn't afraid of being caught. But he should have been. Sleep deserted me. Nights stretched long and endless. The ceiling above me a blank canvas for every thought I tried to push away. David's breathing was steady beside me, deep and rhythmic. As if his world was untouched, untroubled. But mine? Mine was unraveling. I lay there, the sheets tangled around my legs, my chest heavy with a mix of rage and grief. My fingers dug into the mattress, clenching so tightly that my knuckles ached. Every memory rose like a ghost. The day we married, when his voice shook as he promised forever. The first house we painted together, our clothes splattered with streaks of blue. The times he'd brought me flowers for no reason, smiling as though I was the center of his world. Were those moments real? Or had he always been this man, capable of kissing me goodnight while planning weekends with someone else? The ache of betrayal burned, but beneath it, something else stirred. A question. What happens to me now? For a while, I wanted to crumble, to scream, to throw every lie back in his face. But then I pictured his reaction. Dismissive, smug, brushing off my anger as hysteria. I could almost hear him saying, "You're overreacting, Emma. You're imagining things." No, I couldn't give him that power. One night, after hours of tossing in bed, I slipped out quietly. The kitchen was cool and dim, the clock ticking steadily on the wall. I poured water into a glass and sat at the table, staring at the darkened window. My mother's words came back to me. She had lived through my father's betrayal years ago, had rebuilt herself from the ashes. I remembered the night she told me, voice low but firm. "The best revenge is the truth, Emma. Not rage, not tears. Just the truth. Spoken clearly." Those words wrapped around me now, solid and grounding. By dawn, I had made my decision. The next day, while David showered, I slipped into his office at home. Papers cluttered his desk, contracts, client notes. And there, tucked in the corner, his laptop. He rarely used it at home, but something told me to look. The screen lit up, his email open. My pulse raced. Reservations. Dinner confirmations. Weekend getaways. Each one a nail hammered into the coffin of our marriage. I printed them quietly at the office later, sliding the pages into a plain folder. From then on, gathering proof became my secret life. While David laughed on the phone, I noted the time and duration of his calls. When he left receipts in his pockets, I tucked them away. Screenshots. Bank statements. Every detail stacked neatly, like bricks in a wall. But it wasn't easy. There were nights I nearly broke. Nights I pressed the evidence to my chest and wept silently, afraid the sound would wake him. There were mornings when I caught my reflection in the mirror, eyes red, skin pale, and wondered if I had the strength to keep going. And yet, each time, something inside me whispered, "You are stronger than this. You are stronger than him." I stopped asking questions. Stopped giving him the chance to lie. Instead, I smiled when he said he'd be late. kissed him goodbye as he left for his client dinners, poured his coffee each morning, steady hands betraying none of the storm inside me. He thought my silence meant ignorance. But my silence was a choice. My silence was armor. And when the moment came, I would break it, not with screaming, but with the weight of undeniable truth. That thought became my fuel. And for the first time in months, I felt not only pain but purpose. Planning became my second life. By day, I was the steady receptionist at Caldwell and Green, answering phones with a calm voice, filing papers, laughing politely at jokes in the break room. By night, I was a ghost in my own home, moving silently, watching, waiting, collecting. Every lie David told me was fuel. Every careless mistake was another thread in the web I was spinning. The folder I kept at work grew thicker each week. Hidden in the bottom drawer, behind stacks of old files, it was my secret weapon. Bank statements I quietly printed. Receipts I smoothed flat. Screenshots I emailed from his laptop to a private account, then deleted from history. But it was never simple. David was careful too. His phone was always locked. He carried it everywhere, even to the bathroom. The one time he left it charging in the kitchen while he showered, my hands shook so hard I nearly dropped it. 30 seconds. That was all I had before I heard the water shut off. The messages I glimpsed were short, coded. Miss you. Next week can't come soon enough. Nothing with a name. Nothing solid. It wasn't enough. I learned to wait for cracks. And eventually they came. One Tuesday evening, David rushed out the door, muttering something about a last-minute client dinner. He left his laptop bag on the counter, half-zipped. My chest tightened as I stared at it. If I touched it, I risked everything. But if I didn't, I slid it open. Inside, his laptop was on sleep mode, the screen still faintly glowing. My fingers flew, heart pounding. His email was logged in. And there it was. A reservation confirmation. A seaside hotel. 2 nights, queen bed. His name. Her name. Claire. I froze, the letters burning into my eyes. Finally, proof. Solid, undeniable proof. I printed it the next morning at work, hands trembling as the paper slid out of the machine. I tucked it deep into the folder. But the closer I came to the truth, the harder it became to keep my composure. At dinner, when David told me about long hours at the office, I nearly laughed. My fork shook in my hand, and I had to excuse myself to the kitchen to breathe. You okay? He called after me, mouthful of food. Fine, I said, steadying my voice. Just hot in here. Each lie was another test, and I passed by staying silent. But silence came at a cost. There were nights I cried in the shower, letting the water mask the sound. Days when I felt like an actress in my own life, playing the part of a dutiful wife while my insides churned. The worst moment came when I almost slipped. It was a Sunday afternoon. David asked me to grab tape from my desk at home. I froze. The folder was there, hidden in the bottom drawer. My pulse raced as he rummaged through, his hand brushing against the stack of papers. What's this? He asked, pulling out a corner of the folder. My throat closed. Work stuff, I said quickly, grabbing it from him with a smile too tight, too fast. Client notes I forgot to leave at the office. He shrugged, uninterested, and went back to fixing whatever needed tape. But I collapsed into the bathroom minutes later, gripping the sink, my reflection pale and wide-eyed. I couldn't afford another close call. From then on, I moved the folder to the office every day, carrying it in my tote bag, never leaving it at home. And still, doubts gnawed at me. What if no one cared? What if exposing him only left me humiliated? What if he turned it around, painted me as paranoid, unstable? I thought about telling my sister, about showing her the evidence and asking what she thought. But I stopped myself. This was my fight, my truth to deliver. Slowly, I began shaping not just a folder of proof, but a plan. Where? When? How? It had to be public enough that he couldn't deny it, but not so dramatic that it looked like I was out for blood. It had to sting, not just his pride, but the very image he had worked so hard to cultivate. I pictured him, laughing with friends, boasting about his perfect marriage, his rock of a wife. I pictured the mask slipping, the truth laid bare. And I knew exactly what I would do. But before I could get there, I had to hold steady. Weeks passed, heavy with tension. My folder swelled. My silence sharpened. And David? He never suspected. Not once. The day arrived on a Saturday, bright and ordinary. David suggested dinner with friends. Our mutual circle, the ones who had always admired our perfect marriage. He was eager, cheerful even, recounting stories of the week, joking about clients and meetings. I agreed, though my stomach tightened. I carried the folder quietly in my tote, its weight both comforting and terrifying. Every page was a testament to months of careful observation, of patience, of silent rage turned strategy. The restaurant buzzed with laughter and the clatter of cutlery. Candles flickered on the table, their soft glow painting everyone's faces gold. David beamed, his arm brushing mine, smiling like the husband everyone believed he was. I waited. When dessert arrived, I pushed the folder across the table. There's something I need to share, I said softly, voice calm, steady. David's smile faltered. And maybe later, he began, but I held up a hand. I opened the folder, letting the papers spill across the table. Hotel reservations, bank statements, screenshots of emails. Each page a piece of evidence, undeniable, meticulous, clear. David, I said, my eyes meeting his. You drained our savings repeatedly. You lied to me, and you've been with Claire. I have proof of everything. Silence settled over the table like a heavy blanket. The clinking of silverware paused. Our friend's eyes widened, darting between us, reading the pages, reading the truth. David's face drained of color. This isn't. I held up a finger. The proof doesn't lie. You don't get to rewrite this story. Claire, who had been working in the same office as him, now became a topic of whispers and widened eyes. Friends murmured, faces flushed with disbelief. David tried to reach for a paper, but I pushed it gently back toward me. You thought I wouldn't see. You thought I wouldn't fight. You thought you could take everything and walk away smiling. I said, voice soft but sharp. But the truth always comes out. He tried to speak, to justify, to beg, but no one listened. Not me. Not the people whose trust he had relied upon. One friend, usually quiet, leaned forward. Emma. I had no idea. This is. I shook my head. It's exactly what it looks like. I've collected months of evidence. Every lie. Every withdrawal. Every hotel. Every dinner. Every hidden email. Nothing is missing. The weight of the revelation settled over David like concrete. His proud posture crumbled. He was no longer the charming, confident man laughing with friends. He was a man stripped bare, powerless, exposed. And as for Claire, the whispers followed her. Her reputation in the office, in the city, was suddenly fragile, questioned. I stayed calm, serene almost, letting the papers speak. No shouting. No scenes. Just truth. By the time we left the restaurant, the ripple had spread. David's friends looked at him differently. Some avoided his gaze entirely. He tried to explain, to make light of it, but the weight of his own actions suffocated him. Outside, I breathed the night air, crisp and cool. My chest felt lighter than it had in months. The anger, the tension, the months of silent preparation. It had all led to this moment. I hadn't sought humiliation for him. I hadn't wanted revenge for the sake of cruelty. I had sought justice. And now, finally, justice had been delivered. The weeks that followed were quieter than I expected, almost eerily so. David had moved out of the house, taking only what he could carry. His absence was a hollow echo, a reminder of months spent in lies. Claire had been confronted by their colleagues and friends. Her presence became scarce, whispers trailing behind her like a shadow. For me, life didn't explode into celebration. There were no parades, no congratulatory messages, only the slow, deliberate work of reclaiming what had been lost. I went through the house, each room a reminder of memories now tainted by betrayal. I repainted the living room walls, choosing a pale gray instead of the beige we had picked together, as though every brushstroke washed away fragments of the past. I sat in the kitchen one morning, sunlight spilling across the countertops, a cup of coffee warming my hands. The silence felt good this time, not heavy, not accusing. It was mine. I returned to work, steadier now, my confidence rebuilt not from pride but from clarity. I noticed small details I had ignored before. a coworker struggling with paperwork, a client needing reassurance. I offered help freely, not because I had to, but because it reminded me of the person I wanted to be. One who saw clearly, acted deliberately, and refused to be controlled by fear or deceit. One evening, I walked along the river near our house, the water reflecting the last slivers of sunset. The current moved steadily, unstoppable, carrying leaves and debris downstream. I thought of my own life, how it had been tangled and chaotic, how I had been swept along by trust and routine. And now, standing there, I realized I was no longer swept away. I was moving forward, deliberately with purpose. I met friends for coffee and laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. I allowed myself small indulgences I had denied during the months of silent observation. A new jacket, a book I had wanted, flowers for the table that didn't match David's taste, but matched mine. The house became a sanctuary again. I planted herbs on the balcony, their scent mingling with morning air, reminding me that life continues, quietly persistent, if tended with care. Sometimes, memories of the betrayal surfaced, sharp as a knife. I would sit with them, acknowledge them, and then let them pass, like clouds over the sun. I realized that revenge had not been about hurting David or Claire. It had been about reclaiming myself, proving to the world, and to myself, that deception and betrayal could not define me. I began to dream again. Not grandiose dreams of escape or reinvention, but small, tangible goals. A weekend trip alone, finishing the novel I had started years ago, enrolling in a cooking class. Each step was a quiet declaration of freedom, a recognition that my life was mine to shape. And with each choice, I felt stronger. Not the brittle, controlled strength of someone who plots revenge, but the deep, grounded strength of someone who knows their worth, who has survived deceit and emerged intact, unbroken, capable of joy and love on her own terms. Sometimes I still sit on the porch in the early morning, coffee in hand, watching the light stretch across the yard. The maple tree in front of the house, once crooked and stubborn, now seems steady somehow, rooted in the soil yet reaching toward the sky. I think of it as a mirror of myself. I've learned that betrayal doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it creeps in quietly, disguised in the routines of everyday life. And sometimes the only way to survive it is to meet it with patience, observation, and quiet resolve. I do not relish the fall of David or the whispers that follow Claire. The satisfaction was never in their humiliation. It was in reclaiming my life, proving to myself that I am not powerless, that deceit cannot dictate my future. I've built new routines, small rituals that ground me, that remind me of the person I choose to be each day. Revenge, I discovered, is not about anger or vengeance. It is about clarity and truth. It is about making sure the story is told correctly, not for anyone else, but for yourself. And in telling it, you find freedom. Sometimes the memory of those long nights, staring at ceilings, tracing evidence, waiting for the perfect moment, returns. But now it is tempered by pride, not pain. I see myself then, a woman pushed to the edge, and I smile softly because she survived. She did not scream or break. She observed, planned, and acted. She reclaimed what was hers. I sip my coffee, inhaling the scent of the herbs on the balcony, the faint fragrance of flowers, the crisp morning air. Life is ordinary again, yet extraordinary in its quiet resilience. The house is mine, the mornings are mine, and the mistakes and lies of others no longer have the power to weigh me down. And perhaps that is the greatest truth I have learned. Strength is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it is in showing up every day, despite betrayal, despite fear, and choosing to live fully, deliberately, and with integrity. I watch the maple leaves sway in the breeze, and I know, like that tree, I have grown back, stronger, steady, and ready to reach higher than ever before.